What up, what up? Another edition of ACC Baseball, etc. Hope everybody's doing well. Danny Graves is on the other screen. If you're watching, you'll hear him here in just a second. Say hello, Danny.
How you doing? That's my wannabe deep voice.
That's it. He's Danny Graves. I'm Daron Vaught. We got Mike Rooney joining us, so let's just get through the beginnings here quickly, so we can get to him. Really excited to have Roons join us and talk big picture stuff, ACC stuff, sort of his national viewpoint of the conference and
guru stuff.
Yeah, you guys know Mike Rooney. He's going to come on here. He's going to spit fire. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
That being said, Gravy, you were in studio in Bristol spitting fire all weekend. How did that go?
It was pretty intense. It was great. The first night there was a long night, as you know. A lot of the games had rain delays, and yours especially. We went back and forth. When's the game starting? We've heard different things. When is it? And finally, the game started, and we couldn't go on the air until after the who was it? The Duke game. Wait.
Yeah, the Louisville Duke game.
Okay, Louisville Duke. Yeah, that's what the game we were coming on after. Well, they have the lights go out, so there's another delay. So we had to cover some time during that delay, and it was pretty cool because we got to jump into some of the games that were going on live. Your game on digital, ACC Network Digital, and I'll tell you this, and I know I told you this before off air. We came to you guys, and then Coach Forbes made a pitching change, so we had to leave. And then we went. Then we went to a different game. I believe it was a Clemson game, Clemson, NC State. Then something happened. We had to leave that. Well, both of y'all's games, we missed a grand slam in your game, and then the Caden Grice grand slam in the Clemson game after we cut in and then left. Could you imagine if we would have had both of those live during the cut-ins?
Yeah, see, that's happenstance, right? Like, what are you going to do from a live production of TV standpoint? I will say this, that was in the middle of a stretch because you texted me and you were like, hey, I think we're going to come to your guys' game.
Yeah.
And I was kind of juiced up for it, right? Big moment, tight game, late.
Yeah.
Okay. Boston College trying to win the series. And that was in the middle of a stretch. Connor Bovair was the starting pitcher for North Carolina. He went 7 1/3, was rolling.
Yeah.
Forbes elected to take him out for a lefty-lefty matchup against Joe Vitrano of Boston College. Vitrano made him pay, got a hit anyway. Not his only hit against a left-handed pitcher on the weekend. He just continued to make Forbes pay doing that matchup. But so then, they played the matchup against the lefty, pulled the guy, put somebody else in, hit, pulled the guy, put somebody else in, and then Cam Leary hit the grand slam you were talking about. So, yes, I think my wording was in my text back to you. I was like, man, that's a shame because ACCN viewers just missed out on an electric go-ahead grand slam.
Yeah. Yeah. And we ended up coming back and showing the highlight of it, but it would have been awesome to have that live on the cut-ins.
Man,
but that's TV for you.
Yeah, no, it was a really, really exciting series to be there for. Just a lot of fun, good games for the most part. Friday night went to extra innings and came down to a freak hop on a ground ball. North Carolina was going to win it, and this top spin grounder hits what was confirmed to us the next day as a sprinkler head on the edge of the grass in the infield. Ball takes a 10-foot hop over Colby Wilkerson, North Carolina shortstop's head, and into the outfield. It drove in 2 to win Boston College the game. And that sort of set up the whole series to be all BC with all this momentum. It was a series that had a little bit of everything. We had some web gems. We had some like bunt singles. We had some absolute bombs.
Well, it made for good TV for us, though. I mean, because the games are all exciting. You never would have thought the sweeps that happened that they were going to happen. BC never won a game at Boshemer, and they ended up sweeping. So that was great storylines. And then, Duke
swept Louisville. They were all one-run games.
Yeah,
They walked off twice.
Right. That's the thing. Like in the first game was the walk-off grand slam from Mooney.
Yeah.
And then Alex Stone, the catcher, who had some issues throwing down to second base, they were stealing like crazy off him, and he comes up offensively and gets some big hits. Man, it was just an exciting weekend all around. And Pitt beats Wake Forest 3-0 in the first game. And we know what happens after that.
Like 45 runs later or whatever it was.
Yeah. They woke up the sleeping bear.
Yeah. Man, it was just, and we'll get into it with Roons.
Yeah.
It was kind of a wacky weekend. I know we say that every weekend, but consider this one the wackiest thus far. Just some real head scratchers, including like that game 1 Pitt in Wake Forest. Mm-hmm. The NC State series, they got swept by Clemson, who is on a roll and looking more and more like a tournament team. Mm-hmm. The one thing, and I was with your former teammate Paul Shuey on our ACC and X games. Mm-hmm. The one thing we said, and he views this a little bit differently because he's a North Carolina guy. He was an All-American at North Carolina, but for purposes of like rooting for the show. And rooting for, and I mean that by both our productions over the weekend and then this show. Mm-hmm. I want as many ACC teams to make it as possible, into the NCAA regionals. And BC's about to have another weekend like this. North Carolina and BC both needed this series this past weekend.
Yeah,
in different ways.
Right,
a win on the series for either was going to put that team, the winner, into the hosting conversation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was going to put North Carolina back into it, and BC furthers their case as a result of the sweep. But now BC's got Clemson this weekend. And if we want Clemson to emerge as a tournament team, they're going to need to win this series.
Right.
Am I willing to give them that at the expense of BC possibly losing out on hosting? I don't know, right? Like, what's better for the conference between the two? And we're just running into a lot of series like this.
Right. Well, BC, I think they're still controlling their own destiny. Their RPI is high, so I'm not sure what Clemson is. I think they're a lot lower, but I think BC is still in good shape. The sweep helps being away, and a lot of their series, they've won a ton of series this year. So anyways, this whole conference is just, it's exciting, man.
Yeah, it's bananas cream pie is what it is. BC is 12 in RPI. Clemson is up to 22.
So they jumped 24 spots in a week.
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty amazing. Well, and Duke jumped 11 in the 7-day period.
Yeah, Duke's up to 17.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it's wild. NC State is down. NC State had been top 10 RPI.
Well, Miami was up there top 15 for a while too.
Yeah, and they're stacked. Miami's 28th, NC State is 29th now. Yeah, this is
crazy, man.
It is so wild.
Yeah.
So anyways, no, just a fun weekend, a lot to talk about with Mike Rooney. Before we get to Roons, you got anything in particular? We'll play Hall of Name with you on the other side of that conversation.
No,
anything stand out from the weekend?
The thumping from Wake Forest, I shouldn't say it stood out, but because we know that's what they're capable of. But after being shut out, and then all
it's a big response.
It is.
We've thought about them, especially in this latter half of the season. You start to sort of try to forecast, which we'll do a little bit of with Roons, forecast for postseason play.
Right.
And that is indicative of the type of task it is to be matched up with Wake Forest in, say, a super regional, right? You get the better of them once, and then they unleash. It proves it's going to be really, really tough to beat them.
Right, right. And another thing, Notre Dame, I know they jumped a bunch of spots in the RPI too, but for them to shut down Geloff and Teal the way they did this weekend, especially the doubleheader. I know Teal got a couple hits, I think, but Geloff didn't get any hits in either one of those games, and that's unusual. He's either getting a hit or driving in a run or something. But Notre Dame pitched and shut them down, and of course they ended up getting a sweep. So a lot of good stuff happening for the teams that you don't expect it to be happening.
Yeah. Which, I mean, in turn, like we said, means bad stuff happening for the teams that have been doing pretty well to this point.
Yeah.
So we'll get, let's go ahead and get to Roons so we can get his.
Can't wait.
He is making his ACC baseball, etc. debut. It is ESPN college baseball analyst Mike Rooney. Roons, welcome to ACC baseball, etc. Some people have issue with the word etc. They throw like a K in there. So
I may be one of those people.
Yeah, I'm workshopping just etc for short. Either way, welcome.
Yeah.
Stoked to have you after a wild weekend, especially in the ACC.
Oh, thank you for having me. Like, I feel like Drew Maggi, right? Like, I just got called up. Like, if I get a hit, do I get to keep the baseball? Like, if this goes well, like, there's got to be some type of memento gravy, right?
Well, I think me and Daron will forfeit our microphones, and they'll be yours.
You can signed microphone.
Yeah, you can hang them up behind you on your shelf right there for all to see.
That's a good idea. This is a nice one too. I got a Behringer here. Like, I mean, it's nothing though. I'll throw the signature on it, and we'll
do it.
We'll hand it that way. Well, let's start. Look, you are the national guy. Danny and I like to take things from an ACC centric approach, right?
Love it. Yeah.
On a week to week basis. What is your impression of the ACC this season? Just sort of a 50,000 foot view or whatever big number you want to assign to that.
Hey, let me do an infomercial first. Like, your guys' podcast is awesome. Like, I'm loving that, because as someone who does want to nerd out nationally on college baseball, you're I don't want to sound negative here, but you're inundated with SEC information, obviously. But the ACC information is trickier, but the league is so important, right? Like, if we were to say the SEC is the league, like the ACC is right there, right? Like, you can't, and we often talk about the last two postseasons, the SEC had these, super teams, Arkansas 2021, Tennessee 2022, that entered the postseason, but didn't get to Omaha because of an ACC team. Mm-hmm. So I love what you guys are doing. We talked off air. The interview with Coach Leggett was legendary. I'm still scared to death of him. I could feel like when Gravy was nervous, I felt nervous, so anyway, I would say the thing about the ACC, just some big thoughts are, Wake Forest is awesome. Like, they are such a super team. And I think Wake Forest coming into the season was a polarizing team because they've been volatile, right? Like, hey, 2017, you're in game 3 of a super regional, and then it was fairly violent, up and down ever since then. Last year, obviously, in a regional, and for them to just be like locked and loaded, like we were talking about this, where Wake Forest at number 2 right now has been set it and forget it, and like that's amazing, right? Like, to be the number 2 team in the country that everyone's like, oh yeah, Wake's top 2, you don't even have to think about it. Like, that's like probably the best compliment we could pay Wake Forest. I think Boston College is an awesome story. Like, and every
Birdball.
Oh, so great. And every week when I feel like, oh, okay, Cinderella's about to turn into a pumpkin, and then they go sweep North Carolina on the road. It's like, so that's an awesome story. Virginia is the team I'm most perplexed by. I almost feel like I'm mad at them right now. Like, I'm just like I fell in love, and then now I'm sitting here with my heart all shattered. Like, they're 20-0 in the non-conference, and they're 12-9 with some weird losses. Because I still think Virginia's position player group could play with anybody anywhere. Like, I'll take that position player group all day long. So, and I'll summarize it with this thought: vintage ACC. Here we are, end of April, and you've got really 11 teams that are legit regional contenders. You could probably argue more than 11, but I'll say 11 that are like right there with pretty dang good regional resumes.
Yeah, and we'll touch on each of those individually, starting with BC. I had their entire series at North Carolina on ACC and X this weekend, and I talked a lot because there was a rain delay on Saturday that kept us just sort of like looking up at the sky and wondering if this cell was going to come through. So I was talking a lot with Mike Gambino, BC's head coach, and he was sort of he got impassioned, Roons, in this pregame conversation. They just got a dramatic extra innings victory on Friday night. They're looking to secure the series, and even throughout that, he has the big picture on his mind, and he's telling me, like, how do we push for this to be the year that 11 teams get in from the ACC? Because he said, if it's not this year, I don't know when it's ever going to happen. And it speaks to the depth of the league. Like, teams who started off on the wrong foot, Clemson, are putting themselves in the picture. His Boston College team obviously is having maybe the greatest season in the program's history. It's just, there are no easy weeks. Even you mentioned Virginia. Notre Dame comes out of nowhere to sweep them over the weekend. It's truly wild. So with BC in mind, I'm going to try this with all of these teams, Roons, and Danny, feel free to chime in with sort of your reasoning here too. What do you like most about them, and what maybe worries you the most about them when it comes time for a regional and or super regional?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first part of your comment first, Stevie. Like, the way you get 11 ACC teams in is the same way you'd get 11 SEC teams in, is we expand the field to 72 teams. Yeah. I actually would be uncomfortable with any league getting 11 teams in a 64-team era. But I love the idea of expanding to 72 teams. You know, given that we're over 300 teams in Division I baseball now, and we could do it, they could do it a really cool way. They could do these Thursday playing games. So let's say, like, I also like 32 hosts where everything's a 3-game series until Omaha. That way, schools like right now, Boston College and Connecticut, and you could argue Northeastern a little bit, are all like going to be in a regional and could even host. But like, are we really going to have multiple hosts in the Northeast? That's unlikely. But they should, right? Like, it's so anyway, I don't want to go down that tangent necessarily. We can do that later. But that's how you get 11. BC, I mean, the thing you asked me, what do I like about the team? What concerns me about them? What I like about them is they play winning baseball, right? Like, BC is not going to hand you the game. You have to go win the game. And that is kind of rare in today's college baseball, where we walk a lot of people, we make a lot of errors. There are a lot of teams that are very dynamic, but they also will, they'll give you 30 outs instead of 27 outs. So BC doesn't do that. They've got their typical Northeast tough kids. Travis Honeyman's a star player. I think Joe Vitrano might be the MVP. Like, he is so good at first base.
Well, he's been there 7 years, so it seems like he's been there forever, right?
Yeah, he's a thick dude too. But and you know the thing about Joe Vitrano, he's so big. Like, I see their infielders all the time throw a ball into the first baseline, and there's no question Joe Vitrano's going into the baseline to catch that ball. And I see the runners are like, "Whoop, okay, I'm good. I'm a
smart."
Smart business decisions are being made by them. So I just, I love Chris Flynn. I love these 5th-year seniors. They've got the Division III transfers on the mound. So the concern about BC is they just run into a team that the roster's significantly better, and that team plays clean. But I think BC's hard to play against because they never flinch. They don't get spooked. They just keep doing their thing. And it's almost like it's like the Iceman from Top Gun, right? Like, you're going to make a mistake. And when you do, they win.
Yeah. So I've kind of called them the jack of all trades, master of none. They don't do everything fantastic. They don't do anything awful. Like, everything is so consistent with them. And I think I feel like that's what makes them as good as they are. But they're definitely fun to watch. And they're going to have a tough weekend coming up with Clemson playing the way that they're playing too, right?
Oh, no question. Yeah, Clemson's a team that I was teasing somebody, like, half of Clemson's roster is like famous. It's some Michigan transfers. Caden Grice has been there a long time. And So you've got some famous players, Will Taylor, the football player, all that stuff. And then they have a bunch of players that I think were from the witness protection program. Like I knew nothing about these kids coming into the season. And you're like, but the coaching staff is famous, and the way Eric Bakich has blended, Coach Leggett back into the program. It's Clemson. I'm really curious to see, like I say it this way. If Clemson were a stock, my wife and I, with her permission, we'd be heavy buyers, right? Like like Eric Bakich and that coaching staff, like Jimmy Bellinger, all in, right? This roster, it doesn't shock me that they're playing so good this end at the end of the year. Is it sustainable? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I had their series. They hosted Duke maybe a month ago, and I like the young pieces that they have. But at the time, even when I was talking to Eric about it, he said, if these guys play to their capabilities, I don't see any reason this isn't a regional team.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an understanding that I think, especially late in a series, pitching staff wise, they have a lack of dudes in that regard. But to me, super encouraging that they're already right here where they are in just year number one with Eric at the helm. I mean, I think it's a matter of time.
Who's the center fielder, DV? Camarella? It's like an
Cam
Italian
Canarella. And I told when
he
I came
seems
back,
like a stud.
He is. And I'll tell you what, Roons, when I came back from doing that series, I told Danny he's in the mix for my favorite ACC player now. Because we got all these guys, phasing out, the Sky Duffs of the world. They've been here a while. They're on the way out. Kyle Teal, Jake Geloff, and countless others. We got to adopt some new favorites. Canarella, there were a couple of instances he just plays with a little bit of an edge. He's a sleight of frame guy, obviously, leadoff center fielder, plays some great defense, good on base guy. But he's got like a little bit of swagger to him that caught my attention. And he's one of those guys that I knew zero about him coming into the season, and saw him in person. He impressed me. It's like, oh, the numbers are really good too. So he's just one of those younger pieces, and they've got a few of them. Nathan Hall's another good outfielder. It's a freshman for them, and I just think it's a matter of time. Maybe next year or the next year where we are not saying at this point in the year, oh, Clemson's a nice surprise. We're saying, okay, we expected them to be here.
And it's another year that with Coach Leggett back, even though says he's not like in control of a lot of things, there's a big difference with the legend in the dugout, joking around with the players. And I know you listened to the podcast when we had with him on at Roons. It's the way that he jokes with them and like brings out the positivity. You add another year to that with these kids being able to be around him, they're going to be that much better for sure. And of course, this name Cam Canarella, if our man Clinton Yates was here, he's putting him on the all name team for sure.
Seriously, it's a legit.
See why he loves the names. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, and I would say this about Eric Bakich. Like, if I'm putting myself in his shoes, like, how do I say this appropriately? I'll just say it, and we could figure out if it's appropriate later. There's no way I'm bringing Coach Leggett back. Like, that would scare the bejesus out of me, right? Like, not because I think about my coach, Pat Murphy, right? And it's like, would I have the courage to get this big job at Clemson, and I'm going to bring this big personality Hall of Famer to be my assistant? Now, again, Eric and Coach Leggett clearly have, I'm being facetious, they have an amazing relationship. And why, and my teammate Craig Counsell brought Murph to the big leagues to be his bench coach. Like, it really is the smart play. I guess what I'm trying to say is, man, you have to be really comfortable in your own skin to do that when you're trying to establish your own program. And that tells you everything you need to know about Eric Bakich.
Yeah, it's the ultimate toss the pride aside move.
Yeah.
And and Chris Pollard and I talked about this last week. At some point in your coaching journey, it becomes, and human nature would have it so, that you first get a head coaching job. Your assistant hires are probably going to be skewed a little bit toward, okay, what's going to help me as a head coach, right? What's going to help me succeed ultimately so that I can keep this job, so I can continue to get other jobs. Bakich clearly, like Pollard, as he and I talked about, is to the point where he's like, okay, what's going to help the guys? what's going to help the players. And I mean, it's a thin line between those two things, right? Because the team performs well, you thus perform well as a head coach, but there is a difference.
No doubt. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's just, I think about Clemson, I think about Florida State, and that's what's fascinating about the ACC right now is, like, again, using the stock market analogy, like Florida State is really, in many ways they're bottoming out this year, but like I would anticipate a very quick turnaround, with Link Jarrett and that staff. And like Clemson, we've just been wondering, what's it going to take for them to get rolling again. And in fairness to Clemson, our standards for them are so high that it's, Monty Lee, his first few years at Clemson, they're hosting hosting regionals year after year, and they just kept getting clipped. Oklahoma State beats them, then Vandy beats them twice at home. But I do feel like when you've get Clemson's got a perfect coach in Eric Bakich, Florida State's got a perfect coach in Link Jarrett, and so then now you've got some programs in the ACC with tradition and resources, etc., that start really rolling. I mean, it's remarkable. The league's in such healthy shape. It's really awesome.
Yeah. We talked at the beginning of the season when our show started that Florida State, we obviously thought they would be a lot better, but my only reasoning was because Link Jarrett.
Right.
Link Jarrett's there and he's a winner. Wherever he goes, he wins. And obviously it's a transition year. And I think you just talked a lot of Florida State fans off the ledge, Roons, because it's something they needed to hear because nobody expected this from Florida State at all. Another team I wanted to ask you about, and we talked about this on the phone the other day with Miami. We can't figure out what kind of team they are. And you kind of comforted me when you said they probably have the toughest road schedule in all of college baseball, because I was really concerned about what direction they were going. Daron and I mentioned both at the beginning of this season that we thought they could do a lot and be really good. And some weeks they're really good and some weeks they're just awful. What's your take on Miami right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty smitten with Miami. Like I saw them just that weekend where they just kind of drummed Florida State, and I had seen them earlier in the year too, and I love their team. Like CJ Kafis is one of my favorite players nationally.
Mm-hmm.
Yo-Yo Morales is just a real threat in the middle. They're kind of like an upgraded Boston College, Gravy. The way you describe Boston College, where like Miami to me doesn't stink at anything. Like they're balanced, right? Like they've got one of the nation's best closers in Andrew Walters, and I think their bullpen is deeper than that. Like they've got a legit bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
They got to have Carson Ligon healthy, right? Like all bets are off if Ligon doesn't. And I couldn't remember if he threw last weekend or not.
He did maybe 4 1/3. He didn't go deep.
I actually think he's their best starter. Yeah, I know Gage Zeal has better stuff, but I trust Ligon more. But Zeal's fine. Alejandro Rosario, does that make me feel awesome that he's the third starter? No, it doesn't. But when you've got like an Alejandro Torres in your bullpen who could go 3 or 4 innings, maybe it's fine, But I just like they're older, they play defense. They can play offense a bunch of different ways. Like they're not that big of a team, but they got all these home runs. Blake Sear is like the next star. Like he's got that it factor to him.
Yeah.
So
Hollywood.
Like he really does have that. Like, he's got the bleached hair, which we're a big fan of.
Yeah.
So I think Miami, and you mentioned the road schedule. So they went to Florida, they went to Wake, they went to Virginia when Virginia was playing great. They had to go to North Carolina, and they're going to have to go to Louisville. I mean, I think Miami is very much a host candidate. I think if they do get to host, it's a good experience that those kids had last year. It's a very similar team. I think Miami's a team that could very well. If you made me wager on an ACC team to go to Omaha this year, not named Wake Forest, I would probably wager on Miami.
Even still, because that is the context in which Danny and I both mentioned them earlier this year, even without the Wake caveat, actually, because I think maybe we were not quite committal to Wake Forest, which has been an easier thing to be as the season has progressed. Well, let's pick up with our favorite thing and what gives you the most concern there with Wake Forest. And I mean, again, it is, like you said, a true testament to them that they are just in Sharpie, the number 2 team in the country. And that's only because we've got another SEC super team ahead of them in LSU.
Yeah. I would say like my favorite thing about Wake Forest, the answer is yes, right? Like just like the thing, but all kidding aside, like the thing that summarizes Wake for me is they're one of the few teams that's got multiple stars in all areas. Like they've got stars in the bullpen. They've obviously got like I don't know they've got the best rotation in the country. I don't even know where else to start that conversation. You know, I think Nick Kurtz, like if ACC Player of the Year is a very interesting conversation right now because it becomes statistical. But if you force me to pick an ACC Player of the Year right now, I would tell you it has to be a Wake Forest player, and I would pick Nick Kurtz. Like I think he's one of the very best players in the country. It's kind of sucks that he missed some time with injury.
Yeah.
Because that's going to put him off the mark statistically a little bit. But I just think that dude is a nightmare, right? Like it's bat to ball. And he's like ginormous, and any ball he elevates is probably not going to stay in the stadium. And so it's like, what are you supposed to do with that besides walk him? And then you got to deal with Wilkin, who's just on an absolute heater right now. And so I Wake Forest, like if I nitpick them, like I'm a little bit worried about the defense, kind of, but I'm really not that worried about it. I'll tell you what I'm worried about Wake Forest. They're just kind of, it's so easy right now. Right? Like that's the only thing, like they're so good that you worry, are they 2022 Tennessee? Are they 2021 Arkansas? Are they 2019 UCLA, where they're so good and so balanced that no one figures out how to beat them until the worst time? That said, I mean, I would always bet on being that team, right? And take your chances and it's all good. They're awesome.
And I mean, even this past weekend, I remember being in the booth, and I was with Gravy's old teammate Paul Shuey as my analyst at North Carolina, and we got sort of to begin aside. We came back with the graphic that was an update on scores across the ACC, and our eyes popped. We were like, "Oh, 3-0 Pittsburgh on Friday." Well, then you look up at the TV and the monitor and the press room the next day, and they're down 20-2. And then
beat them on Sunday. Don't beat them on Friday.
Yeah,
that's a bad idea.
Bad idea. So it sort of reaffirmed Wake's dominance in a way that said, "Oh, this is what they would do even if they lose the first game of a super regional." Like that's they take it personally, and they can just flick a switch offensively, which again gives me less pause about the defense. I think I'm with you there.
That's what happened to us at Miami '92 when Roons and Notre Dame Fighting Irish beat us one game in the regional. It really made us mad, so we went and beat everybody else after that. So sorry, Roons.
No, it's good. It's good. Hey, Dan, this is those are even though we lost and you guys went to Omaha, Gravy, I got to tell you that weekend is some of my favorite baseball memories. Like it was so, Craig Counsell was my classmate, and I actually got to start a few games in that regional because we had an injury, and Counts was just going off. Wasn't Charles Johnson your catcher that year?
Yep.
I mean, it was Jeff Alkire.
Jeff Alkire. Listen, if we didn't have Jeff Alkire, we wouldn't have made it. This dude pitched. He threw so many innings that weekend, and
he was awesome.
I thought his arm was going to fall off, but
he was so good.
Oh, he was so good.
He cut me up on 3 pitches. I didn't have a chance. It was like curveball, fastball away, fastball in. Here, take your swag and get out of here.
You're not the only one he carved up, though, so don't feel bad. But he's that lefty that it's so deceptive, and he doesn't throw extremely hard. He's like Josh Hartle from Wake Forest. Just gonna not necessarily thumb you to death, but he's gonna throw where he wants to throw it with multiple pitches, and it's definitely something fun to have on your staff. But this Wake Forest team, I don't even think anybody talks about Justin Johnson, and he had 8 RBIs in that one game on
Tommy Hawk and all those. I got to share this. Yeah, great player. I didn't love him my first look last year, but he's really grown on me. So I didn't ask Dan McDonald if I could use this comment, but it's so positive I'm going to use it. Sorry, Mac, if you're listening. So I had a Louisville game last week, and I asked him. I said, Mac, tell me, they had just played Wake Forest. I said, who does Wake Forest remind you of? And he thought about it for a second. And you know how thoughtful Mac can be, and he's like, they remind me of those Vandy teams, like, David Price, Pedro Alvarez, like those teams where it's like their roster is so overwhelmingly talented. He said from a technical standpoint, he said their command of the breaking ball is outrageous in the bullpen. Like the bullpen just comes in, they're just ripping breaking balls and it strikes. And the one thing Max said that is interesting, he said, hey, if I was, he said, by the way, I called Tom Walter after the series and said, man, you got an awesome team. Like like I love your team. But the one thing that comes into play for Wake Forest that I've heard people say is, hey, they play in a park that's very small. And if they're in a tight game late in the postseason, because they're going to be playing at home, right? They're in a tight game late, somebody could run into a ball and hit a 3-run bomb or something like that. Now, Wake Forest could run into a ball. They could run into 5 balls, right? So it's like, but that their field will be an interesting part of their postseason. They're certainly more than well equipped to play there.
Yeah, but it's funny though, because Wake Forest doesn't play like it's a small park. They've got guys. Yes, they're going to hit it out of the ballpark, but Nicky Nukes isn't a home run hitter. He's a gap to gap guy, and he hits the ball so hard and that like gets that top spin. And I did one of the games, and the ball just kept going.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah. And that's the difference, Gravy. This year's Wake Forest team, if you've really paid attention, they're not like this just overwhelmingly physical team that is giving up defense to just try and hit home runs. Like you're seeing them win a bunch of different types of games. They can win a 3-2 game just as well as they can win a 11-10 game. And so I think, Wake Forest is so good in every facet. Brock Wilken is not Scott Rowland at third base, clearly, but he's also like one of the scariest offensive players in the country right now.
Yeah. And I think Nick Kurtz is Roons sort of the perfect emblem for what you're saying about Wake Forest. I watched the guy lay down a bunt for a single earlier this year and then steal second base. Like in the same game that he yanks one to the gap and is a foot away from a bomb, right? It's just they can beat you a number of ways. You mentioned Justin Johnson, Gravy, like that is a sleight of frame dude. He's like 5'10", 180. And I've seen him launch one 410 feet. I've seen him poke singles through holes. They all are collectively such great hitters overall.
If someone's going to beat them in the postseason, they're going to have to be playing out of their minds.
Yeah.
Which, like that's what 2021 NC State was. They were just a great team playing in Fuego. Right. Notre Dame last year, great team, just playing awesome. That's what it's going to take. Like, if you're going to go beat Wake Forest in the postseason, you better have your A game, like A+ game.
Right. Right.
All right, Roons. So we've got Wake, we've got Miami. Those are the sort of established, could do damage in the postseason in your mind. Who comes next as far as ACC teams go?
Man, I want to say Virginia because I believe in that position player group. It's just so weird when Nick Parker got hit with that line drive, even though he's back, it just feels like that Virginia has just been weird ever since. I would wager on Virginia because I just believe in the position player group so much because they're kind of like Wake Forest, like they're really scary offensively, but they play incredible defense. It's a very athletic group. I don't get it. I can't put my finger on why Virginia at 12-9 in the league just is bizarre to me. Like that, I can't even process that. Louisville is interesting. They don't have any stars on the mound, but they've got some reliable options. They're just right now with no Jack Payton, although he's back. He finally came back.
Yeah. Christian
Knapchick's got to come back. Gavin Keelan, I should say, their second baseman, freshman, is a star. Like they got to get him back. So I could see Louisville doing some damage. I think after that, Duke is really interesting. Who would have thought that Duke would lose Jonathan Santucci and then just get white hot, right?
Yeah.
Like just you lose your ace on a team that really doesn't have standard rotation options, and now you have none, and you just go off. So Duke is, but the thing about Duke is Alex Mooney's become a real X factor. Like he's kind of become the dude. He's been a good player since he showed up. Now he's a star. Now he's taken over games, and they've got those freshman arms at the end, Talon. Duke is very, very interesting, and it's a program with postseason pedigree too.
Yeah. Do you think? I don't want to jump on
no.
a question here, Danny. With Duke in mind, They to me are the most interesting of that group because of the unconventional pitching staff approach. Santucci out. They're down to basically one starting pitcher in Alex Gal, another division. We talked about BC's guys, another Division III transfer. Gal, a former D3 All-American at Kenyon. And he's a pitchability guy, right? He's not going to blow you away with stuff. I think he threw for 4 innings over the weekend. So you're still asking a lot out of the pen when that happens. Whether it be regional that favors them, super regional that favors them, how does that approach in your mind mesh with potential postseason success or lack of?
Yeah, let me give a what's this called, a disclaimer before I put my foot in my mouth here. Chris Pollard is way smarter than me, and like we've all watched Duke. Like I had the super regional where Duke goes and plays Vandy and just bombs them 18-5. Now Vandy did win that super regional, win the national title, but it's not lost on me that Chris Pollard has taken a program in Duke that hadn't been to a regional since 1961, and now we're going to multiple super regionals. That said, man, like the thing that scares me about the way Duke operates is I do worry a little bit about their defense. Like they're really big. And Alex Mooney's a premier defender, but I don't know that they have a premier. I mean, maybe you could call Lux in center field when he plays out there, at least an above average defender. But I worry about their defense a tiny bit. They're just really big. But again, Alex Mooney's kind of like the X factor there. The thing I don't like about using so many pitchers is it's not like pro ball where these kids are 28 years old and you can say to Danny Graves, hey, Danny, Gravy, you're going to give us 3 outs today. And you pretty much know what you're going to get. Like this is a seasoned professional. For me, the more pitchers you put into a college game, the more you are just taking your lighter next to a stick of dynamite. Like it takes one dude to just lose it. And it's like the whole stadium's on fire now, right? Like that's the way college baseball works. And I worry that Duke, like the average Duke game, it feels like they're using 5, 6, 7 pitchers. Mm-hmm. And that, like, what's interesting? I feel like that's hurting North Carolina right now, but then Duke is thriving doing it. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess at the end of the day, it depends on the kids. But I really like Duke, and I love how they approach building a roster, and obviously what they've done in the postseason under Chris Pollard is incredible. But if you're asking me, is that something that would help me sleep at night? No, it would be the opposite. I would not be sleeping well.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because remember, Daron, I asked you last week before you did the Duke series to possibly see what the deal is with Ryan Higgins, because he's been pitching great, but he's only been going 4, maybe 5 innings at the most. So, like, why can't he go a little bit deeper to save the rest of that staff? I mean, that's my question. And of course, as Roons says, the disclaimer: Coach Pollard is a lot smarter than me. Yeah. But
having spoken to him just last week, and there was a stretch of weeks. I think I had Duke 4 consecutive weeks during the year, so I've talked to Pollard a lot, gotten to see the program a lot. I think it comes down to, Danny, that they have not pushed him that far so far this year, right? And then it becomes a coaching philosophy thing where, are you comfortable pushing a guy past whatever the most pitches he's thrown in the season at this point?
How are you going to find out if you're comfortable or not unless you try it?
Right. And so maybe they see using multiple pitchers as being not as averse to risk as using more, right? For that reason, because you don't know what's going to happen past the 80 pitch mark or whatever. I think
Duke's into the data too. And, the data can spook you, like, hey, first time through the order, the batting average is this, second time it's this, third time it explodes, all that stuff. But it's funny. I don't think Chris Pollard's alone or Scott Forbes is alone. I see a lot of teams, out west where I live, Arizona State, Willie Bloomquist, they're pretty limited on the mound. So they've created these really specific roles for pitchers. Like, hey, if this guy pitches, you don't pitch that day. because your stuff's too similar to his. Like we've been joking that Arizona State's actually going to forfeit a game this year because they can't fit the game into the roles, right? It's like, we're good.
Forget it. We'll see you tomorrow.
That does not fit my matrix, so we're out. We'll see you tomorrow. The times BP.
That's awesome. I love that.
All right, well, let's work on some other ACC things. You alluded to this already. I had planned to ask about it. So maybe we dig in a little bit more on the player of the year conversation. Obviously, we can sort of tell on ourselves as media coming into the season with who we choose as preseason player of the year. I don't think Vance Honeycutt is really in this. I mean, he's had a fine season. I don't think he's really in this conversation. Everyone understands he's really good.
Hurts my heart.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Even though, this is the wild thing, a lot of his numbers are so much more improved from last year. Remember, about this time last year, he had started to dig out of this valley where it was he's striking out too much. Mm-hmm. And we used this for a graphic for one of our broadcasts over the weekend. His strikeout rate is about 10% lower than a season ago at this point. His walks rate is about 10% higher than it was a season ago. So in a lot of ways, he is having an as good or better season this year. So, and it's just, that makes for an odd conversation when you're talking about player of the year, and he's really nowhere to be found in it. You mentioned Kurtz as sort of had he been healthy the whole year. When we include full season stats, Roons, where's the conversation start for you?
Yeah, I mean, Jake Geloff you can't ignore because, I mean, Jake Geloff's probably going to lead the country in RBIs, right? Like, so it's like it's just so funny that Jake Geloff's so consistently awesome. But maybe I'm a little old fashioned here, but I believe I don't like giving an MVP award, which is kind of what this is. I don't like giving an MVP award to a player not on the best team. Like, it's not that I'm not willing to cast that vote, but like for me, with as special a team as Wake Forest has, like somebody's got to steal this award from them. And I can't get past Wake Forest. Like Nick Kurtz is this, I think he's legitimately the best player in the league, like talent wise, how good he plays, that type of thing. And I'm willing to extrapolate the stats based on what I think he would have done when he wasn't injured. I think Brock Wilken, even though it's not this, the batting average is never as sexy as maybe some others. Like, I just think Brock Wilken strikes me as kind of a heart and soul player for Wake Forest. Like, when I see them play, it feels like he provides energy that is winning energy to them. And so I would be very focused on the Wake Forest guys. I would tell you guys with Vance Honeycutt, like, I think he's going to go out this summer, play in the Cape. Even Scott Forbes has said on occasion, like, I want him to strike out less, but I don't want him to be consumed by it. I think he's actually consumed by it. Like, he just, even though all the metrics that you mentioned, DV, I'm in on, but he just doesn't look right. He looks in between. He looks
like
cautious.
Unaggressive.
Yeah, that's exactly the word. Gravy.
Very tentative.
Yeah,
right?
He needs a good summer of just go. And here's the thing, like, Vance Honeycutt at 50% could still help them win games. And, North Carolina hosted a super regional last year. And at this point, they were just coming off of 5 straight ACC series losses. Like their season was on cardiac arrest, but then they got hot. So, North Carolina is a very interesting team, but I would, Nicky Nukes would be my player of the year.
Yeah.
So with Honeycutt, like, is there, you guys, either one of y'all will know this answer. Why is he not hitting leadoff as much anymore as he was last year? Or maybe you won't know this answer.
I have a guess. You want to take my guess, DV? You got a guess?
Yeah. Go ahead.
My guess is that Scott Forbes is just trying to find a spot for him to get comfortable. And your point is well taken though, Gravy. Like, maybe leadoff would be the answer. I haven't looked at how much he has batted leadoff this year. It kind of reminds me of CJ Kafis, where I know Gino told you guys that in his interview, where, hey, he's our best hitter, so I hit him third because that's where you hit our best hitter. That's where you hit your best hitter. And he stunk at 3-hole, and he was a mental mess. I hit him leadoff, and now he's like 5 for 4 every game. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. for whatever reason, when he hits leadoff, he thinks he's a good player, and when he hits third, he thinks he's not a good player. So he's hitting leadoff.
That has a lot to do with it, man. I
Yeah.
really believe that. And Vance Honeycutt, what he did last year out of the leadoff spot, even if there's a lot of strikeouts, he still sparks this team from the top of the lineup.
I will say this. Scott Forbes, and he and I, because of proximity, he and I talk a lot about these sorts of things. The way they handle a batting order at North Carolina is different than anywhere else in the country, I think, just the ways that they think about it. We had a production call last year in which I sort of, and Roons, you guys have been in these calls, right? They go through the order, tell you who's playing where, give you a couple of tidbits on everybody just to get the conversation started, right? So I followed up one time with, why are they here and there? Why is your leadoff guy there? Why is your two guy there? How do you construct that lineup? And he gave me like a very detailed response and said, one is going to be your best on base guy. Two is the best hitter on your team, which checks out right now because he's hitting Mac Horvath there, who's been on a tear. Your top four overall are your four best hitters, third of which in the order is the worst of those four. And it's just this very calculated way of doing things. He's tinkered with it a lot this year, sort of swapping those top four. So it is interesting to think about, okay, why is Vance not hitting in the leadoff spot? Because that's where he thrived last year. And he was taken out of that. I mean, around this time last year when they were struggling, like you said, Roons, I think Vance was down to the 9 hole.
9,
at one point. And then he started getting hot and striking out a little bit less, and they put him back.
I would say this, though,
spot.
DV. Sorry to interrupt you. I would say this. Like, if I'm in the other dugout and Scott Forbes said to me, hey, what is your biggest nightmare in regards to my lineup? Like, what lineup construction for North Carolina would have you into the Tums in the first inning? And I would say Honeycutt first, Horvath second.
100%.
Like, we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
I want nothing to do with that other than the opposing dugout.
Yeah.
Right? Like those two studs over and over again.
Yeah. And I think this year, and especially having spoken with him about it just this past weekend, it's become clear Casey Cook is their now firm leadoff batter. And he's riding a 28 game on base streak. So he's a good player. He's just a pure hitter.
Yep.
I think some of this is Cook playing himself into that spot rather than trying to figure out what to do with Vance. But I'm with you. I mean, 1-2 Vance Mac is nightmare fuel. I don't know that there's a team in the ACC offering up a better 1-2. Right.
And if you're a pitching coach on another team and you see that Alberto Osuna is hitting behind Honeycutt, well, guess what? Honeycutt's not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And Berto's been down at like 7th and 8th in the order.
The best part about North Carolina's team is that Hunter Stokely's their best player. I love that. I love every game. Stokely's got 3 knocks. He's just, he looks like a men's league player. It's the best.
Yeah. Incredible stuff. What about coach of the year in the ACC?
Ooh. Wow. Got to be Gambino, right? Like, how can it not be Tom Walter? Whew, that's tough.
See?
Yeah. That's really hard. Like I probably would give it to Tom Walter because this is a special team he's put together, and like the way Wake Forest has constructed this roster is so on point. Like it's recruiting, it's development. They can't just recruit in their backyard. They've got to go all over the place. You've got Louder as a North Carolina kid, Hartle's a North Carolina kid, Sullivan's this transfer from Northwestern. They what's interesting? Wake Forest crushed the transfer portal, but they don't have the NIL money that I'm aware of that some others do. But what they do have is a great institution, a great, like they've got the pitching lab they could show you. Like they've got some real track record of first round picks, etc. So I don't know. I feel like Wake Forest. It's kind of like that deal where they've had some pretty significant program adversity over the last several years. So what that forces you to do is you got to fix every little hole in your boat because you don't know which hole is the one that's holding you back. So you fix everything and then you wake up and you're like, holy crap, this is like an awesome boat, right? Like it's we thought our boat sucked. Our boat's actually awesome. And that's what I feel like has happened to Wake Forest. It's like whatever, what's that expression that, the intense fire creates the diamond. That's what I kind of feel like has happened with Wake Forest, is like they've always been really good and better than they were given credit for. And now it's just on fire.
It's
so
hard
Tom
not to-
Walter.
Yeah. I mean, with that kind of team, it's hard not to give it to him, but I love your pick with Gambino just because where they are, nobody expected them to be where they are. And he's doing this with a team that, no disrespect, but the talent level paper to paper is like nowhere close to
It's
Wake
just
Forest.
not there. Yeah.
But
like they've got good, talented guys like Honeyman, but even he's underachieving by his standards and by his ability.
But the amount of superstars that Wake Forest has and the amount of superstars that Boston College has, it's night and day. And Gambino has done an amazing job keeping these guys in it.
I hate to be the guy that uses coach of the year to be like, okay, give it to the coach of the team that most exceeded expectations. And I love Tom Walter, and all of your points are valid, Roons. I've got and we'll have to see how the last few weeks pan out too, right? Because I mean, the bidding is not done. I think for me, it's got to be Gambino. And what I love most about that guy is, and I talked to him a lot over the weekend, this dude is the king of taking what others perceive as disadvantages and spinning it into, guys, this is good for us.
Yeah.
First question when we talked to him prior to this past weekend series. Hey, coming off of an ACC series loss against Duke, you guys were at home, broken attendance record, still couldn't get 2 out of 3. Then you go to stores and get run ruled by UConn. I mean, like, where's the team's head at? He goes, yeah, I'm glad. And in perfect Gambino language, there was an F-bomb or two in there. But he's like, no, I'm glad that happened. That was so good for us. And they came in having lost 2 of 3 to Duke and getting speed bagged by UConn. They came in as loose and confident as any team could for that series against North Carolina. And they had never won there. They won Friday night in extra innings to take their first ever game in Chapel Hill, 0-7 team all time prior to that. Mm-hmm. And they took the next 2 and swept it. Like, it was history every night, because it's like first win, first series win against North Carolina, first sweep against North Carolina, first sweep of the season in the ACC. Yeah. I'm with you. It's very tough not to give it to Tom Walter, but man, Gambino's done an awesome job.
No question. Yeah, it's incredible, because to Gravy's point, like, you wouldn't line up. No offense to Boston College, but in no way would you line up their roster against some of these other rosters in the ACC and say, "Oh yeah, give me that one." Right? Like, they're just playing great.
We were doing it against North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as you do before you call a series. Okay, what do we think is going to happen? Okay, well, Carolina's on paper that much better. It's just like, okay, well, neither bullpen is super impressive by the numbers. I would depend on Mac coming through with more knocks, Vance coming through with some more big hits.
This is a funny experience. I'm watching North Carolina, BC, and it's hard not to pull for BC, right? Like, they've been through so much as a program, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, when you start to affiliate with a team, I'm looking at Cam Leary. And I saw Cam Leary hit 3 home runs against Miami last year, the Palmquist game, and he just raked Palmquist. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at Cam Leary, and I think that kid could be so good. And he's hitting 240 over the weekend with 19 RBIs. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, they got to get Cam Leary going. Like, you're going nowhere fast with a 4 or 5 hole hitter hitting 240 with 19 RBIs. And I'm like, I catch myself really getting down on Cam Leary. Next thing you know, it's like, whack! He hits this 3-run homer to center field to win the game. You're like, oh man, thank God I didn't tweet that. It's like,
and he was the hero.
Into a hot mic, but it's good.
And
good.
He was the hero the night before too, right? So it was a solo home run in the top of the 9th to put them up on Friday in the game that went into extras. So that applied pressure on North Carolina, where there wasn't really to that point. And then it was actually, I got to correct it, it was a grand slam to center field that ultimately won it for them and won them the series. So it's like to your point, and then Travis Honeyman had an absolute nuke in that series and was good. He had a great diving catch in right that he made. But yeah, you look at the numbers and you're like, okay, they're not bad. And then you see them and it's, man, these guys, this X player, Y player, Z player could be so good or is so good. And the numbers are just not there for it. It's really
like Gravy
interesting.
said, when you're playing BC, man, you better bury them. Because
Yeah.
if you let them hang around, that's bad. That's bad policy. They'll figure it out if you let them hang around.
So this past weekend they get the starter out, game's over. Like, they took advantage of every one of them relievers that came in.
Yeah, crazy.
It's really, really interesting. All right, Roons. What else you got? Big picture thoughts. Is there a team we haven't talked about?
We haven't talked about NC State because, like we talked about Clemson instead because Clemson just swept them. But I still, if you ask me to make a wager, the thing that's problematic about NC State is they're right now they have a regional resume. I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
But they're 2-5 in ACC series. That's not great, right? Like they could be, that's a good roster. Like that's a good team. And I think that's a team with some heart. They could have easily got swept by Virginia and they fought it off. They could have easily got swept by Miami and they fought it off. They had that huge comeback win against Louisville where Louisville came back on them. And this NC State team's intriguing to me because I love Highfill in the bullpen. Willardson seems like he's back on it. Everything. I love what Jacob Cozart's doing. Like he's kind of found another gear. I think NC State's got a run in them. I don't. That was weird. Like that Clemson series was, maybe that's just Clemson played great. I don't know, but I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. I real quick, Willardson had a game that wasn't one of his normal games that he's had all year, but I do believe that he's back to being a top-notch starter for them. And Highfield too. He came in and had a little bit of trouble throwing strikes, and when he threw strikes, they were just crushing it. But I do like him in the bullpen too. And me and Daron talked about that a lot when we had Coach Avent on here. But I still like them too. Gino Groover is legit. He freaking rakes.
Great player. Yeah.
Cannon Peebles, the freshman, just hits bombzillas every time it seems like every weekend you're talking about 1 or 2 home runs that he hits.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing with NC State. Had you told me prior to the year starting, okay, they're going to move Highfield to the bullpen. Matt Willardson's going to have a career year. This guy, Dom Fritton, that they've added is going to be great also. So, that's a guaranteed 2 really good seasons out of starting pitchers, okay, with Highfield in the bullpen. Yeah, those freshmen they added, Eli Serrano and Cannon Peebles, they're going to be kind of breakout stars too. Jacob Cozart's going to play the best season of his life. If you would have bullet pointed all of those, I would have thought they're 5-2 in conference series or whatever, the mirror is. It's an interesting team in that they just have weird weekends like this one.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. I will tell you guys this as kind of a summary thought, and you guys will be there. I will not. But the ACC tournament's going to be wild. I mean, that could be a blast. Because think about it. There's 12 teams there. The only team that won't be playing for something is Wake. Like, in theory, Wake it's a tune-up for them. Everybody else is either playing for a bid or a hosting spot or a top 8 like that. And like, you're going to have 12 really legit teams there. It's going to be, and even if you're in one of those dead games where because of seeding, the game doesn't matter for the ACC tournament, it's going to matter for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So I think, what is it, Charlotte this year or is it back in Durham?
Durham.
I love that's. By the way, the best 2-city rotation of any conference tournament. Like, both are amazing.
You can't go wrong with either. Yeah.
No, so great. Yeah. Like that tournament's going to be awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned it. We were sort of trying to do on the broadcasts this weekend, trying to do some forecasting. And, the nuanced stuff, who's in what pool, that matters way less because, like you said, the conference is Wake Forest, a bunch of everybody else, and then Florida State at the bottom of the everybody else. It looks like maybe Georgia Tech's going to be the other team that misses out. but they're kind of close. They're in this middle
Yeah,
cluster
they're close enough.
as well, right?
Mhm.
So it's whatever teams. It's going to be super disappointing for the one team in that cluster that gets left out with Florida State.
Yeah.
But it's just all of these teams can play with each other, can beat each other.
Yeah. It's going to be nuts.
It should be fun.
Now, here's the thing, boys. Maybe we end on this. Last time I was at the ACC tournament, it was in Durham, which is like we just talked about. Like Charlotte is amazing. Durham is amazing. Like great city, great location. It's just super cool vibe. It's awesome. And what I've told people, people nitpick on the format of the ACC tournament. Now people are copying it, ironically. But what I tell them all the time is, hey, like the first few days when you're playing those pod games, you're seeing really good teams play. So that's fun. When it gets to Saturday and the single elimination kicks in, it is electric. It feels like one of those high school state basketball tournaments where it's just like you can feel the juice in the stadium. But here's the point. I was like, if I'm going to make it about myself, when we were in Durham doing the tournament, I check into my hotel room and there's a 6-pack of hipster beer, which I know is kind of the Durham thing, just sitting on the counter. And, like I like a beer as much as anybody. And I was like, oh, yeah, like I feel very welcome here. Now, I've never been to the ACC tournament in Charlotte. So the city of Charlotte, if you're listening, when Gravy and DV and all these guys get there, like the bar has been set. Like Durham's got a 6-pack of beer in your room. I don't know what Gravy. Do we remember? Did Charlotte even do anything for you guys last year?
Let's say that I can't wait to go to Durham to see their hotel. Listen,
go.
Everything at the ballpark at Charlotte was tremendous. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Couldn't complain about anything. But as far as the hotel that we checked in, the lobby was on like the 4th or 5th floor. The only thing we got to do there is go to the rooftop bar that Kelsey Riggs wanted to go to because she knew people up there, but one drink cost $50. And I'm like,
ooh, that's not
dude,
good.
I don't care how strong or how great it is. $50 for one drink. That's insane.
Yeah.
You guys can cast aspersions to one or the other. I happen to be in the state of North Carolina with a lot of work in both cities.
Yeah,
so
don't do it.
We're gonna stay out of that.
I
will say I am a Triangle of North Carolina resident rather than a Charlotte, North Carolina resident, and that I'm not in a position where I can't pick where I live. So I'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
Well done.
All right,
so
Roons. Really, really do appreciate it. I knew we were excited the second we determined we were going to make this happen. So appreciate you as always. Have fun the rest of the way. Come on, we got weeks left of this.
Daron, let's kind of call an audible right here for like our normal show. We have the name game. I would love a name game for Roons.
Ooh, how do I? Yeah.
Ooh, a Hall of Name.
Hall of Name.
Man, see, that's easier for. So Hall of Name Roons with Gravy. I've got a list of former teammates of his, and I name one, and he's just got to go. Stream of consciousness, first thing off the top of his head, whatever story, anecdote, awkward interaction, whatever.
Funny, serious.
I don't have a Craig Counsell story. I mean,
I think that's where I'm going to go because I don't have a pre-made list for you.
Yeah. So our famous Craig Counsell story was when we were at Notre Dame and we weren't in the ACC then. We were in the Midwestern Collegiate Conference, which doesn't even exist anymore, the MCC, if you will. So Counsell and I are classmates. We're freshmen together, and Pat Murphy, who's now the former coach at Arizona State and Notre Dame and bench coach of the Brewers.
By the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, seriously. Like him and all that whole era of coaches, like Coach Leggett, Murph, Ron Frazier, Skip Burtman, Gene Stevenson, Mike Gillespie. I'm scared to death of all of them, right? So Wayne Graham. So Murph is 29 years old when he's coaching us at Notre Dame. And, there's no phone cameras or any of that type of stuff back then. I mean, just complete lunacy. But it was awesome. Like Murph was so great to play for, but it was wild. And so Counts was a great player, but he was very quiet. Like Counsell's, like he's got this baseball IQ that's an easy 80. And because he just understands the game so intuitively, he doesn't speak on the field because he just like sees it. And Murph was all over him about Counts. Like, you don't understand, like, you might be playing next to Mike Rooney, who doesn't know jack about baseball. Like he was playing CYO basketball when you were in the cage, right? Like he doesn't even know how to take BP. You know, like you got to talk to him, right? And so Murph got so mad at Counts one day that we were taking fungos, and Murph made Counsel scream "mine, mine, mine" at the top of his lungs on every fungo. So think about you're in line taking fungos, and Counts, who it prefers not to speak at the time, we were 19, screaming "mine, mine, mine" on every fungo. So this is going on. This is spectacle enough, right? It's going on for like 10 minutes. Next thing you know, the assistant coach hits a fungo that takes a bad hop, breaks Counts' nose.
No.
Yeah, same drill. Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, like so as a 19-year-old, I'm like, I don't even know what is happening, right? Like I don't even know, like do I need to be keeping a journal or what? It was great. So anyway, those were such good times. It was, when we were freshmen, Counts was like 150 pounds and a good player. When we were seniors and in Gravy's regional in Miami, like he was one of, like every game we played, Counts was one of the best players on the field. Like we felt like we got to that game against Gravy's Miami team to play for Omaha. We had a nice team, but we had a nice team and Counts, like you just felt like this dude's not going to let us lose. And it's ironic, like this time of year, I look for teams like that. I look for teams that have that guy that basically will say to his teammates, hey, we're not losing today. Like, I know you guys are nervous. I got you. Like, we're not, this is going to go our way today.
Right. It's amazing. Well, he wins wherever he goes. He wins, even as a player, as a manager. And I mean, he's great. And it's funny that you mentioned how quiet he is, because whenever you see him going out to argue with an umpire, you're like, really, what's he saying? Is he going to scream at this guy, or is he just politely saying, dude, you got that way wrong?
Right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, you should be disappointed in yourself, Mr. Umpire.
Yeah.
So great. All right, thanks for having me, you guys. This was super fun. Really
Thank you, Roons. Appreciate you and indulging Gravy there. So that's Hall of Name with Mike Rooney. We're going to do it with Gravy here in a second. But
love it.
Roons, enjoy the rest of the season, the rest of the way. We'll see you around, hopefully with some postseason play. I mean, everybody's everywhere at that point. So if not, we'll see you on our TV screens, and we look forward to that.
Can't wait. Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Roons.
Thanks again to Mike Rooney, Roons, as we know him, for popping on with us, man. That was fantastic stuff.
That guy. He's one of a kind, man. One of a kind.
He really is. He
might be the most well-liked person in college baseball, in the whole college baseball world.
How do we feel about in sports media, right? Across sports.
And I say college baseball because if you follow college baseball, you know who Mike Rooney is. I'm just afraid that the big league people are too snobby to enjoy college baseball analysis. And I say that, like, try to say that kindly, but
yeah, sure. That's fine. We'll tiptoe around some things as we have done with Roons already.
Right.
All right, we did Hall of Name with him as a surprise. Let's do our usual Hall of Name with Danny. This is the part of the show we let him close out every show. Of course, former college and big league closer. By giving a small look into his experiences as a college and professional pitcher, I pick a former teammate of Danny's, and I've got my pre-made list here. It includes teammates everywhere, at Miami, with Team USA, in the bigs. Some of them, I guess, minor league teammates as a result of that. I don't have a minor league list. I'm going to work on it as we do. I've got a list of probably a couple hundred teammates of yours, Danny. So like once we chew through those, I'll start a minor league list.
Yeah, so we got some time still. We got some time before we chew through all these.
So I say the player's name. Danny has to tell us the first story, interaction, anecdote, awkward interaction, seemingly long elevator ride, whatever with that person.
PG rated.
Yeah, of course. Always something like that. Maybe a step above. Maybe PG-13.
PG-13, yeah.
We'll see. It really depends on the player. So we gotta we got to make a selection first. So I had one picked out. We're going to do two. We're going to do two today.
All right.
Because I do want maybe, but I that desperately want to get to your minor league teammates and the more obscure ones. Maybe that's it. So we're going to go with another Hall of Famer for this one.
All right.
We have not done this yet. You played with him briefly in your time with the New York Mets in the second half of 2005, I think, right? That's the year. The chronology there is right.
2005. Yep.
Okay. Mike Piazza.
I knew it. I knew this was coming up. I knew it.
Well, we did two pitchers last week or 2 weeks ago. So I feel the need to get, and especially him, like you throwing with him as battery mates. There's got to be something here. Yeah.
So Mike Piazza is one of the coolest dudes like I've ever been around. Like he is so laid back. I know the outside perception of him, and even as a player against him for so many years, I always thought he was very intimidating and not a nice guy, and didn't want to talk to anybody, and just this big dude is like, leave me alone. But he is
the Clemens thing did that, right? With the
What's
bat,
that?
The broken bat. The Clemens thing probably did that.
Yeah, but like when you just look at him, he had the facial hair and he had the long hair and he was jacked, and it's like this dude is so big and strong, he might break you in half if you say the wrong thing, but he was just like the coolest dude that I've ever been around. He was so laid back, and I know I already said that, but quick story, and then I'll continue about Piazza. So back in the day, I used to like fancy a lot of cars and like make them all pretty and do
we've
stereos.
Heard. For those of you who maybe caught on a little bit late with the show, go back and check out. I think it was Hall of Name number 1 that we did.
It might have been
the King Griffey Jr. story.
Yes,
that went out for reference. But yes, we follow.
Yeah. So, well, back in the day, I don't know if it's still a magazine or not, but there was a big magazine that would come and take pictures with celebrities and athletes on their car collection. So it is called Dub, D-U-B.
Okay.
So it was like one of the biggest like production magazines for the celebrities and athletes coming out as far as like stuff, because we liked stuff.
Yeah.
So when I got traded to the Mets, or not traded, when I got released and then signed with the Mets, the first thing that he said to me was, "Dude, your cars were in Dub magazine, man." Like just so laid back. And I was like, wow, Mike Piazza is telling me about my car being in the magazine. And I'd met him the year before at the All-Star game in 2004. It was in Houston. And ironically, he was a starting catcher. Roger Clemens was the starting pitcher. So, and of course we know all that history, but I didn't get a chance to really talk to him. It was like, and I didn't pitch to him because I didn't throw in that game. And anyways, he was out after a couple innings. But it was like, "Hey, Mike, good to see you." And "Hey, Danny, nice to see you." But my real conversation was, the first thing was, "Dude, your cars were in Dub magazine." And it was just the coolest thing ever. But I will tell you, like we've had so many other conversations. We'd sit around and like, I don't even know how to explain the kind of guy that he is. He cares so much about people. He cares about being around people. He cares about, being kind to people. And it's amazing because, as I said, you get this perception of certain players that you play against and never really get to know, or even sometimes you don't even get to meet them. And you just think, dude, these guys are probably jerks. I never want to be around that dude. Right. And Mike Piazza is completely opposite. Such a great guy. And I can give you a little trivia. It'll probably never come up in a trivia question. But his last official game that he played at Shea Stadium as a New York Met, the very last pitch that he caught was from me. I was the pitcher that threw to him his last appearance as a catcher at Shea Stadium. This is after, I'd given up.
Would that have also been his final appearance of his career or no?
No. He ended up playing with the Padres after that, I believe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You just did that thing where I pictured him in that uniform, and I probably have not envisioned that since he did that. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's a real Joe Montana to the Chiefs kind of vision.
yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Right. I mean, when you say Piazza, like he had a great career with the Dodgers too. Don't get me wrong, but he's a Met. He's a New York Met, and I think that's what everybody remembers him as. But I feel like I'm a special part of his Shea Stadium, like goodbye.
Yeah.
And it was great because it kind of took away from my awful performance on the field. So I don't know if I might have given up a home run to David Bell. It was if it was the Phillies, I gave up a homer to David Bell and got out of the inning, and that was it. And he got the standing ovation. Or I gave up a home run to Todd Helton against the Rockies. I'll have to look that up. And
but it was one of the two.
One of the two. And so we walk off the field, but instead of me getting booed, everybody cheered for Mike Piazza. So he
saved you. Yeah, he saved you from getting the boo birds in New York. That's what
he totally did. He totally did.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I got a couple of follow-ups. So Piazza obviously had a something of a collection of cars of his own at the time, right? I mean, or at least was interested in them.
Yes, he was like a gearhead.
Okay. Did you guys ever like hang and like you go see his cars?
No. He was like, not to say he was like totally private, but he couldn't go places and do things because people recognize him. And you know, I could walk around New York City and be like, nobody would have any clue who this dude was. But Mike Piazza can't do that. So I don't even know where he lived. I don't even know if he drove his own car to the stadium. Maybe somebody drove him. I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. But he was an awesome dude, man. Like, not many.
Well, okay. I did have another follow-up because again, this is something that I have known about you since we started doing the show.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have cars now? What's that like? What's that like?
Well, I've matured. I've matured a lot.
I mean, I don't doubt that, but like you can be a mature adult and also have like some wild cars sitting in a garage somewhere. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I don't. I just have a normal F-150 truck, and my wife has a car. And then our daughter has a car. So we just got 3 cars here.
So it's just the straightforward family stuff.
It was just that, you get that. I was always told the new money is good money. So whenever you get signing contracts or you get paid every 2 weeks, and that year, those last couple of years, my 2-week checks were pretty good. So I just would like to go and buy stuff.
Sure.
That was in a different part of my life, Daron, that I just needed something to satisfy me, and buying stuff satisfied me.
It checks out. It's fine. It makes total sense. I just can't believe I hadn't asked that to this point because again, we've talked about your cars a couple of times now.
I'm not into them like I used to be.
No,
no.
That's fine. That's fine.
I think it's a maturity thing too. I mean,
you got other things to worry about, and
I'm into different things now, not just cars. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right. Let's pick our second name, and then we'll get out of here. We've gone terribly long, thanks to Rooney. Well, a sincere, it's not normally when you say thanks to whatever, it's like a jab. That's a sincere thanks to Roons. We've gone long.
I think people would love to hear from Roons.
As opposed to me for sure. All right, so Piazza done. Let's not do another Met. Here's a good one. From your time with the Reds.
Okay.
Known widely across baseball circles as the mayor, Sean Casey.
Yeah. So, as I said, that Piazza was the coolest dude. Sean Casey obviously is the nicest dude.
Yeah.
The nicest dude in all of baseball. And that includes like college baseball, foreign league baseball, minor league baseball. There's nobody nicer. There's nobody that cares more about other people than Sean Casey. And I don't know what story comes up first. There's so many good times that I had with him. And I still talk to him very often, and we're still tight. And Oh, I can tell you one story that's so funny.
Okay.
There's a lot of funny stories, but obviously,
it's always fun watching your brain work when I give you a name, because you're like, which ones can I tell? Which story, which is going to be best for this medium?
Well, I can tell you that with Casey, there weren't like anything too crazy that, because he was very calm and didn't like to get in much trouble.
Sure.
Me, on the other hand, that's another story. So we did go to some concerts, a lot of concerts together. Poison and Cinderella was one of our big concerts we went to. And
nice. Okay.
There's pictures of, we have a picture of, it's me, Casey, Adam Dunn, Todd Walker, and Aaron Boone, all like rocking out in our Poison clothes and Cinderella. It's amazing. But the thing that for me, the first thing is, gosh, see, now I got another story that I want to tell about Casey. One of the years, I believe it was 2001 or two, probably 2002. I started growing my hair out during the off season, and I just wanted to try something different. So as it was growing out, when the season started, it looked a little mullet like, and that wasn't the look that I was going with. I wasn't trying it, but it fit the bill, especially with the hat on, and everything tucked in and the hair coming out of the back. And Casey was great at coming to the mound in the ninth inning and pumping me up and trying to like motivate me. And he would always say like, "You're the best closer in baseball. You got this." And I'm like, okay. I wouldn't say the best closer in baseball, maybe on our team at this moment, but so he would always just pump me up. And then one game this season, he out of nowhere, he's like, "Let's go, man. It's mullet time." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "It's mullet time." I said, "What does that even mean?" So and I don't know how the game ended up, but we went on this show, the Best Damn Sports Show period, when that was a show back in the day. We went on that show and we told that story, and I'm like, I still don't know what that means. Like, it's mullet time. So anyways, that's just his character, just funny, but like trying to get guys motivated. But the story I was going to say was, we went many years without physically seeing each other. After I got released from Cincinnati in 2005, and then he kept playing and we did our own things. And, he got into the media business, and I got into the media business, and I ended up doing something for MLB.com up at Pittsburgh, like pregame stuff for Pittsburgh and Reds game. And Casey is from Pittsburgh, and it just happened to be that he was in town at this moment. So we call, and I'm like, "Dude, let's get together. Let's hang out." He's like, "Here's my address. Take an Uber. Come see me." I'm like, "How far is it?" He's like, 10 or 15 minutes. Well, 45 minutes later, in my Uber ride, I get to his house, and it's way out in the boondocks. Well, it was cold too. It was freezing cold. We sat out on his indoor patio or outdoor patio, fireplace on, watching baseball. We drank 3 bottles of wine, the two of us. And like, before I knew it, like, I had to run out of his house and just start puking, because it was like 3 bottles of wine between 2 people. And Casey's like, "Come on, dude, you can do it. Like, rally time," or whatever, like trying to pump me up. I'm like, "Case, I'm done, dude." That's it. Yeah. He's a piece of work, man.
That's a good time.
I think as former, like, if I had to pick any former teammate that I could say that I like genuinely love as a person, it's Sean Casey. Like, nobody better, dude.
Nice.
That's
amazing. A good one to close on. Great one to close on.
Yeah.
All-timer of an episode here. Holy cow.
I know. Crazy, right? And real quick, going back, it was Todd Helton that hit the home run off me. And I got Matt Holliday to fly out, and that was the last of Mike Piazza. October 2nd.
That's a little bit better than David Bell. All due respect to David Bell. It's like a little more forgivable that it was Todd Helton. You know what I'm saying? So
and it wasn't the first homer I gave up to Todd Helton in my career either. So
maybe we'll he wasn't a former teammate. Maybe we'll Hall of Name him at some point. I guess maybe for an All-Star.
He was Todd Helton?
Yeah.
I played with him on Team USA.
You know what? He is on my list. on Team USA.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So we will stash that one for later. That's good. That's good. Awesome stuff. Thanks again to Mike Rooney for joining us. As reminders, quickly, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at ACCBSBETC on each of those. I started to say both, but there are 3. Wherever you listen or watch, rate, review, subscribe, whatever the button says, right? You know all the things that are good for podcasts. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. If it is a number of stars, if they do it that system, 5 stars, please. And leave something that's appropriate for air. We'll read it on the show. We actually have some to get to. We'll do that next time when we don't have
and we have some things to send out too.
Of Mike Rooney. We do. We have some things to send out. And I hadn't been mentioning this. We're about to get a facelift pretty soon for the imaging of the podcast.
Nice.
I'm excited for that. So be on the lookout on all of your socials and whatnot. This logo up above Danny's head will change a little bit as a result as well. There it is.
There it is.
Nice. All right. Go do those things as your homework. Tell your friends and just rave to them about this podcast and why they should listen, and also go subscribe and rate and review. And
because Mike Rooney raved about it, so everyone else.
That's getting posted. You better believe that's getting posted. We're using that.
Perfect.
All right. Danny, you got anything coming up this week, games wise or anything like that?
No, I don't.
That's okay.
This week is off. I just have this other show for Major League Baseball, but
nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a slower week, which is nice.
I got a slower week
stuff.
too. Slower week too. I'm going to be in Washington D.C. for the weekend.
Working or vacation?
Mostly leisure. Mixing in a work thing or two. So no, that'll be nice. Gonna go check out some I guess the cherry blossoms are still a thing. Past a couple of weeks ago, right? I missed like the big bloom, but
they're all over the place in Bristol.
Yeah,
they were covering the cars everywhere.
Huh. Maybe, all right. Well, if I miss them in DC, maybe I just got to make a trip up to Bristol. That's what that means.
That's right. Nice.
All right. Everybody have a good week. For Danny Graves, I'm Daron Vaught. Thanks for listening.
Good stuff right there.